Yes, they met. Yes, that was against William's wishes, but there was no sense that I'm getting that laid out the red carpet for Harry. These two images from Meghan's mole side by side show why Harry looked so miserable on leaving Clarence House.
Since he hooked up with Meghan, he has spectacularly lost his popularity. He seems to be obsessed with getting it back.
Prince Harry's latest meeting with King Charles has set the internet on fire, not because it was warm or groundbreaking, but because of just how cold and short it really was. Imagine crossing the Atlantic, dressing up for tea at Clarence House, and walking away with nothing more than a lukewarm teacup memory. That's exactly what happened, and it's left both royal watchers and the public buzzing about what it means for the future of the monarchy and Harry himself. Reports confirmed this was Harry's first sit-down with his father in over a year, but instead of reconciliation or a new chapter, what people saw was a reminder of just how divided the royal family has become. According to insiders, the entire so-called reunion lasted 55 minutes, though some sources suggest the actual private part of the conversation between father and son may have been closer to 20 minutes. The rest was filled with protocol, security checks, and an atmosphere more suited to a diplomatic meeting than a family catch-up. Observers online were quick to roast the entire encounter, comparing it to a failed speed date or even a dentist appointment. Short, uncomfortable, and leaving Harry without even a free toothbrush to take home. But what really made headlines wasn't the length of the meeting, it was what Harry reportedly asked for, and how those requests were received. Sources claim he came prepared with an agenda, one that sounded less like a family conversation and more like a business negotiation. Among the rumored demands were financial backing, continued security support, and official recognition of his children's titles. There was even talk of covering mounting legal costs, which only fueled speculation that Harry's trip was less about healing and more about bargaining. For many, this was the ultimate miscalculation. Critics online pointed out that the meeting seemed more like Harry pitching on Shark Tank than trying to mend a fractured father-son bond. Public reaction was quick and brutal. Memes spread across social media, joking that Harry came looking for the crown but left with crumbs, or that his wish list was like asking Santa for every toy in the catalog only to find an empty stocking on Christmas morning. The image of him walking out without so much as a polite smile cemented the impression of a man leaving a room with more frustration than progress. Complicating matters further was Queen Camilla's presence at the table. Harry has previously criticized her role in the past, painting her as the third person in his parents' marriage and accusing her of image rehabilitation at his family's expense. For him, walking into that room and finding her seated alongside his father must have felt more like a boardroom standoff than a personal reconciliation. Commentators quickly pointed out the irony. Harry might have expected a father-son chat, but instead found himself facing the royal power couple as a united front. And Charles's reaction, calm, measured, and utterly unyielding. According to insiders, he didn't rise to any emotional bait or attempt a heated argument. Instead, he leaned on protocol, treating the meeting with the cool professionalism of a monarch rather than the warmth of a father. Some described it as the royal equivalent of a store clerk saying, "Sorry, no refunds, no exchanges." That icy silence spoke volumes. It was a refusal delivered without drama, and it left Harry with little room to maneuver. With Camilla reinforcing the stance, the meeting turned into less of a personal heart-to-heart and more of a reminder of who truly holds the power within the monarchy. The optics outside Clarence House only added to the drama. Onlookers reported Harry leaving at a brisk pace, avoiding smiles or waves, looking more like someone rushing from a tense business negotiation than a son leaving a family gathering. Photos captured the stark contrast. Charles composed and regal, Harry appearing tense and frustrated. Social media had a field day, dubbing it the shortest comeback tour in royal history and comparing Harry's demeanor to a student who just failed a surprise test. Media spin added another layer. While official palace channels remained silent, some outlets rushed to frame the meeting as a step toward reconciliation, hinting that it marked progress between father and son, but online reaction wasn't buying it. Viral comments mocked the coverage, saying if that was reconciliation, then awkward Zoom calls could be considered peace treaties. Others joked that the silence from Clarence House was like a magician's trick. The meeting happened, but nobody knows what really came out of it. The consequences didn't stop with Harry. Almost immediately, the ripple effects hit Meghan and their wider brand. Entertainment insiders began pointing out that platforms like Netflix and Spotify thrive on access and drama. Without fresh royal connections or inside scoops, the Sussex narrative risks going stale. Social media mocked the couple's projects, comparing them to reality shows without any drama, or to Survivor where everyone politely shares coconuts instead of competing. Commentators noted that every frosty royal rejection makes it harder for Harry and Meghan to present themselves as relevant insiders, threatening the long-term value of their media deals. Critics also underlined the larger problem: timing. Charles's reign is now firmly established, and William's future role looms large. Once Charles is no longer on the throne, Harry's chances of repairing ties with William seem nearly non-existent. That means every denied request or icy meeting isn't just a family setback, it's a narrowing of the Sussexes' window to remain tethered to the monarchy in any meaningful way. Public reaction framed the meeting as a chess match. Harry came in with rapid moves, laying out multiple requests at once, hoping to corner his father into granting something. But Charles played the long game, moving little, saying less, and still maintaining control. One viral post summed it up perfectly: you can't outplay an institution that's been perfecting the art of drama and optics for centuries. Harry might have come prepared with demands, but the monarchy responded with silence, which in this case proved louder than any statement. As the dust settled, attention turned to legacy. Commentators pointed out that decades from now, documentaries won't remember what kind of biscuits were served at Clarence House, but they will remember the image of Harry leaving empty-handed while Charles projected stability. The symbolism is powerful. For Charles, it reinforces the image of a monarch prioritizing duty above drama. For Harry, it risks being recorded as yet another chapter in a saga of disappointment and failed reconciliation. Public opinion is split. Some see him as an underdog fighting for his family, while others argue he has cemented himself as the royal who couldn't regain what he chose to leave behind. Adding to the narrative is Harry's own public image, which critics say has been shaped by contradictions. He frequently emphasizes concerns about safety, demanding taxpayer-funded security, yet in his own memoir he openly detailed military actions and has traveled to conflict zones without hesitation. To many, this creates the impression of a man projecting vulnerability while simultaneously pursuing high-profile activities that contradict those concerns. That contrast only fuels skepticism about his motives during the Clarence House meeting. What the meeting ultimately showed is how the monarchy plays the long game. No fiery speeches, no dramatic outbursts, just silence, optics, and unshakable tradition. Charles didn't need to say much because the lack of concessions and the absence of warm fatherly gestures told the world exactly where things stand. For Harry, walking into Clarence House may have been an attempt at negotiation or reconciliation, but walking out in under an hour with nothing to show for it symbolized just how little ground he has gained. The internet continues to debate whether Harry is truly fighting for family ties or for relevance. Memes, commentary, and media coverage have all painted him as increasingly isolated, while Charles appears steady, calm, and untouchable. And as attention inevitably turns back to Meghan's moves and the couple's next big headline, the Clarence House meeting remains a stark reminder that in the battle of image and influence, the crown still holds all the cards. In the end, the story isn't about tea or biscuits, it's about power, image, and survival. Harry arrived with high hopes and a long list of demands. 55 minutes later, he left with none of it. Meanwhile, Charles carried on as though nothing had happened, embodying the monarchy's centuries-old strategy: let silence and symbolism do the talking. And that may prove to be the harshest truth of all, that history won't remember the details of the conversation, but it will remember the cold optics of a son leaving empty-handed and a king who never blinked. What makes this moment even more fascinating is how quickly it has been woven into the broader narrative of the monarchy's future. Royal historians point out that every public appearance, every private leak, every frosty silence becomes a thread in a much larger tapestry. Harry may have been hoping for a personal breakthrough, but instead he provided another chapter that strengthens the institution's image of discipline and continuity. The monarchy thrives on symbolism, and the image of Charles holding his ground while his son departs unsatisfied will echo for years, possibly defining how this chapter of royal history is remembered. Meanwhile, Harry's critics argue that this cycle of meetings and disappointments is becoming predictable. Each attempt at outreach seems to end in the same way: short meetings, no concessions, and a public narrative that makes him look increasingly marginalized. Supporters, however, insist that his persistence shows resilience, that he's still trying to secure a future for his family despite overwhelming odds. Either way, the Clarence House meeting has set the stage for more speculation about what comes next. Will Harry attempt another round of talks, or will this failed sit-down finally push him to step away from the monarchy's shadow entirely? And perhaps that's the real question left hanging in the air. The royal family may project control, but Harry's determination to keep knocking on the door ensures the drama isn't over. Each rejection may weaken his public standing, but it also guarantees attention, headlines, and global fascination. For better or worse, the story of Harry versus the Crown is far from finished, and this 55-minute tea might just be remembered as the moment where the lines were drawn more clearly than ever before.